Bear asks for help from a truck driver, leaving him panicked, and the reason will make you cry non-stop. The Montana sunrise painted the sky in hues of amber and rose as Jack Morrison's 18-wheeler rumbled along the isolated highway near Missoula. 20 years of trucking had taught him every bend of these roads, every whisper of the wind through the pines, but nothing could have prepared him for what awaited him around the next curve. The CB radio crackled with static, his only companion on these lonely hauls. His weathered hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as he navigated the winding road, his thoughts drifting to his late father's stories about these mountains. The old tribes believed these forests held sacred bonds between man and beast, his father would say, his eyes twinkling with mystery. Jack had always dismissed these tales as mere folklore, until today. The massive grizzly appeared without warning, standing in the middle of the road like an ancient guardian. Jack slammed on the brakes, the truck's tires screaming against the asphalt. His heart thundered in his chest as the vehicle shuddered to a halt mere yards from the bear. But it wasn't the adult bear that made Jack's breath catch in his throat. It was the small, whimpering cub lying motionless beside it. The mother bear's eyes, deep pools of intelligence, fixed on Jack with an intensity that seemed to pierce his soul. There was no aggression in her stance, only desperation. "This can't be happening," Jack muttered, reaching for his radio. Static, nothing but static. He was alone, truly alone, with one of nature's most formidable predators silently watching him. The mother bear took a step toward the truck, then looked back at her cub. The message was unmistakable. Jack's hands trembled as he reached for the door handle. Everything he knew about safety protocols screamed against what he was about to do. But something deeper, something primal, called to him. His father's words echoed in his mind. "Sometimes, son, the greatest acts of courage come from trusting what your heart knows to be true." As he stepped down from his cab, the cool mountain air filled his lungs. The mother bear's eyes never left him. Slowly, deliberately, she backed away from her cubby, creating a space for Jack to approach. "I must be out of my mind," he whispered, taking his first cautious step forward. The cub lay still, its breathing shallow, a strange discoloration visible around its mouth. Jack's trucking experience had taught him to carry a basic first aid kit, but this was far beyond anything he'd prepared for. The mother bear made a soft sound, almost like a whimper. It was a sound that transcended species, a universal cry for help that Jack couldn't ignore. As he knelt beside the cub, he noticed something that made his blood run cold, a small dart, almost hidden in the cub's fur. This was no accident. Someone had done this deliberately. In that moment, as the morning sun climbed higher over the Montana wilderness, Jack Morrison found himself at a crossroads. Behind him lay the safety of his truck and the familiar world of highways and schedules. Before him lay something else entirely, a mystery, a danger, and perhaps most surprisingly, a chance to believe in something greater than himself. The mother bear watched, waiting, as Jack made his choice. And in that choice, though he didn't know it yet, lay the beginning of an extraordinary journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about the natural world, about trust, and about the ancient bonds that his father had spoken of with such reverence. The radio's static seemed to mock Jack as he frantically tried different frequencies. His fingers, usually steady from years of handling heavy machinery, trembled slightly as he adjusted the dial. Nothing but the hollow sound of dead air answered his calls for help. "Mayday, Mayday. This is truck driver Jack Morrison on Route 12, 20 miles west of Missoula. I need immediate veterinary assistance. Does anybody copy? Over." Silence. Through the windshield, he could see the mother bear had settled beside her cub, occasionally nuzzling it with heart-wrenching gentleness. The sight stirred something deep within him, memories of his own mother, long gone now, caring for him during childhood illnesses. A distant crack echoed through the valley, a sound Jack knew all too well, a rifle shot. The mother bear's head snapped up, her powerful muscles tensing. Jack's stomach churned as he realized the implications. Hunting season was months away. Anyone firing rifles in this area now was likely up to no good. Making a swift decision, Jack grabbed his emergency kit and water supply. As he stepped down from the cab again, he noticed something glinting in the morning sun near where the cub lay, Approaching carefully, he discovered a small metal capsule, the kind used in tranquilizer darts, but this one was different. It bore no official wildlife management markings. "This isn't right," he muttered, pocketing the evidence. The mother bear watched his every move but remained surprisingly calm. It was as if she understood his intentions, trusted him even. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. Another shot rang out, closer this time. Jack's hands moved swiftly as he examined the cub. Its breathing was labored, and a strange foam had formed around its mouth. Whatever was in that dart, it wasn't a standard tranquilizer. The cub needed professional help, and fast. A memory surfaced, his father's voice again, telling stories around their old fireplace. "The Salish people believed that bears were our teachers," he'd said. "They taught that when a bear chooses to trust you, it's a sacred responsibility." The mother bear suddenly stood, her massive frame casting a shadow over Jack. But instead of feeling fear, he felt protected. She positioned herself between him and the direction of the gunshots, her posture alert but not aggressive. Just then, Jack's phone buzzed, a single bar of service, flickering weakly. His fingers flew over the keypad, sending a message to the local wildlife authorities with his GPS coordinates. Whether it would go through was another matter entirely. The cub stirred weakly, letting out a pitiful whine. Jack removed his jacket, carefully wrapping it around the small creature. The mother bear made no move to stop him. If anything, she seemed to approve. "Hang in there, little one," Jack whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Help is coming. It has to be." A new sound drifted through the trees, voices, distant but approaching. The mother bear's muscles rippled under her fur as she turned her head toward the sound. Jack's heart raced as he realized they were about to have company, and he doubted their intentions were friendly. In that moment, as the morning mist swirled around them, Jack Morrison found himself part of something he couldn't quite comprehend. Here he was, a simple truck driver, crouched beside an injured bear cub while its mother stood guard, all three of them caught in a web of mystery and danger that seemed to be tightening by the minute. The voices grew closer, and Jack made a decision that would change his life forever. He couldn't leave these bears to face whatever was coming alone. His father had always said that true character reveals itself in moments of choice. This was his moment. What he didn't realize was that this choice would uncover a truth far more startling than anything he could have imagined. A truth that had been waiting in these mountains for generations, waiting for someone who would listen to the whispers in the wind. The approaching voices grew clearer, carrying snippets of conversation that made Jack's blood run cold. "Worth at least 50 grand on the black market. Mother won't leave without the cub. Just need to wait them out." Jack's mind raced. Black market wildlife trafficking. He'd heard rumors of such operations in these remote areas, but never imagined he'd find himself in the middle of one. The mother bear's unusual behavior suddenly made more sense. She hadn't just been seeking help, she'd been seeking refuge. With careful movements, Jack retrieved his phone again, still one bar. He opened his camera and began documenting everything. The dart, the cub's condition, even managing a few discreet photos of the equipment he could now see partially hidden among the trees. Professional-grade tranquilizer guns, cages mounted on ATVs, high-tech tracking equipment. This was no amateur operation. The mother bear suddenly tensed, her massive head turning toward a dense patch of pines. Jack followed her gaze and caught a glimpse of movement, camouflage clothing, the glint of a rifle scope. His heart nearly stopped when he realized they were surrounded. But something extraordinary happened next. The mother bear, instead of charging or fleeing, pressed closer to Jack and her cub, creating a tight triangle. Her behavior defied everything Jack knew about wild animals. It was almost as if a memory struck him with the force of lightning, his father's voice telling one last story before passing away. The elders spoke of a time when bears and humans could understand each other, when they formed alliances to protect the land. They said this bond still exists, waiting to be awakened in times of great need. As if responding to his thoughts, the mother bear made a soft huffing sound. Her eyes met his, and in that moment, Jack felt something shift in his understanding of the world. This wasn't just about saving a cub anymore. This was about something ancient, something sacred, awakening in the Montana wilderness. The crunch of boots on pine needles grew closer. Jack could make out 3 distinct sets of footsteps. His mind raced through options. His truck was too far to reach safely, and even if they made it, the cub was in no condition to be moved roughly. Then he noticed something else. The mother bear was trying to tell him something. She kept looking toward a narrow gap between 2 boulders, then back at him. The gap led to what appeared to be a hidden ravine, invisible from the main road. "Smart girl," Jack whispered. "You know these mountains better than any of us." With infinite care, he gathered the cub in his arms. The mother bear led the way, her movements surprisingly silent for such a large animal. They slipped into the ravine just as the first poacher emerged onto the road. The hidden path descended sharply, following what appeared to be an ancient game trail. The mother bear moved with purpose, clearly familiar with this route. Jack followed, struggling to keep his footing while carrying the precious bundle of fur that seemed to be growing weaker by the minute. Above them, voices erupted in anger as the poachers discovered their quarry had vanished. The sound of ATVs roaring to life echoed through the valley, but down here in this hidden corridor of stone and shadow, Jack felt strangely protected. The mother bear moved like a ghost through terrain she knew intimately, leading them deeper into the wilderness. Every so often, she would stop and wait for Jack to catch up, her eyes holding a patience and intelligence that continued to amaze him. The cub stirred in his arms, letting out a weak whimper. The sound seemed to energize its mother, who increased her pace. Jack realized she wasn't just leading them away from danger, she was leading them somewhere specific. As they descended further into the ravine, the morning light barely penetrating the dense canopy above, Jack Morrison began to understand that he had stumbled into something far larger than himself. The ancient stories his father had shared weren't just legends, they were memories, passed down through generations, waiting for moments like this. What he didn't know yet was that their destination would reveal secrets that would shake the foundations of everything he thought he knew about the relationship between humans and the wild. After what felt like hours of careful descent, the narrow ravine suddenly opened into a hidden valley that took Jack's breath away. Ancient pines formed a natural cathedral, their branches interweaving high above to create a living ceiling. A crystal-clear stream wound through the center, and the morning light filtered through the canopy in ethereal beams. But it was what lay beside the stream that made Jack stop in his tracks. Built into the rock face was what appeared to be an old ranger station, long abandoned by the Forest Service but somehow preserved by the sheltered location. The mother bear headed straight for it, her purpose clear. "Well, I'll be damned," Jack muttered, following her lead. Inside, dust motes danced in the dim light filtering through grimy windows. Old filing cabinets lined one wall, their metal surfaces rusted but intact. A desk stood in one corner and, most importantly, a radio setup that looked more sophisticated than anything Jack had seen in a standard ranger station. The mother bear nudged him toward a worn couch, clearly wanting him to set down her cub. As Jack carefully placed the weakened animal on the cushions, his eyes caught something else. A journal, its leather cover cracked with age, sitting on the desk. The date on the first page, 1973. Property of Dr. Sarah Blackwood, Wildlife Behavioral Research Station Number 7 Project, Ursus Arctos Horribilis Communication Study Classified. Jack's hands trembled as he read further. Day 247. The results are extraordinary. The bears show signs of intelligence far beyond our current understanding. The mother bears, in particular, demonstrate an ability to communicate with humans that defies conventional scientific explanation. The local tribal elders were right. There is something here that modern science cannot fully explain. A weak cough from the cub snapped Jack back to the present. He needed to focus on immediate problems. The station's first aid kit, though dated, contained basic supplies. As he cleaned around the dart wound, the mother bear watched attentively, occasionally making soft sounds of encouragement to her cub. The radio equipment, despite its age, appeared to be connected to a solar power system. Jack's heart leaped when he found the power switch, and ancient tubes hummed to life. This wasn't just any radio, it was a powerful long-range system designed for emergency communications. This is Jack Morrison. Stranded driver requesting immediate assistance. I have an injured bear cub, possible poisoning, and evidence of illegal wildlife trafficking. Does anyone copy? Over. Static crackled, then suddenly. This is Missoula Wildlife Response. We copy. We've been trying to reach you. GPS coordinates. As Jack relayed their location, he continued reading Dr. Blackwood's journal. What he found made his skin prickle with goosebumps. Final entry. They're shutting us down. Our findings about bear-human communication are too controversial, but I won't let them destroy decades of research. I've hidden the full records in the station's secret compartment. The bears know, they've always known. They remember the old alliance, and they're waiting for someone who will listen. The mother bear suddenly perked up, moving to the window. In the distance, the sound of helicopter rotors cut through the morning air. Help was coming. But as Jack waited, watching over the cub while reading more of the journal, he realized that his involvement in this story was far from over. Dr. Blackwood's research hinted at something extraordinary, a scientific basis for the legends his father had told him, a hidden truth about the relationship between humans and bears that had been suppressed decades ago. The helicopter sounds grew closer, but so did something else, the distant roar of ATVs. The poachers hadn't given up. They were coming, and they were coming fast. Jack looked at the mother bear, who met his gaze with unwavering trust. In that moment, he made a silent vow to protect not just these bears, but the secret this valley held. A secret that could change everything we thought we knew about the natural world. The cacophony of approaching vehicles grew louder, a stark contrast to the serenity of the hidden valley. Jack's mind raced, torn between relief at the incoming help and fear of the approaching threat. The mother bear, sensing his anxiety, let out a low, reassuring growl. Suddenly, the radio crackled to life again. Mr. Morrison, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez with Missoula Wildlife Response. We're about 5 minutes out. Can you give us a situation update? Jack quickly briefed her on the cub's condition and the approaching poachers. As he spoke, his eyes fell on a section of Dr. Blackwood's journal that made his heart skip a beat. The bears have shown an uncanny ability to lead trusted humans to this valley in times of great need. It's as if they're guardians of an ancient pact, choosing their allies carefully. The realization hit him like a thunderbolt. He hadn't found this place by chance. The mother bear had chosen him, guided him here for a reason. Dr. Vasquez, Jack said, his voice tight with urgency. There's more at stake here than just one cub. This station, it contains research that could change everything we know about wildlife behavior. We need to protect it. There was a pause on the other end. When Dr. Vasquez spoke again, her tone had changed. Mr. Morrison, listen carefully. My team has been searching for this station for years. We're part of a covert task force investigating the suppression of Dr. Blackwood's research. Whatever you do, don't let those poachers near that data. The sound of ATVs was now alarmingly close. Jack's mind raced through options. The mother bear suddenly moved, nudging him toward a section of the wall that looked slightly different from the rest. Of course, Jack muttered, running his hands along the paneling until he felt a hidden latch. A secret compartment swung open, revealing stacks of files, data drives, and what looked like old film reels. As Jack began to transfer the precious cargo into his backpack, a commotion outside caught his attention. The poachers had arrived, their voices harsh and angry as they realized they'd been outmaneuvered. "They're in there," one shouted. "Get that data and those bears. Whatever it takes." The mother bear positioned herself between the door and her cub, her massive frame radiating protective energy. Jack stood beside her, Dr. Blackwood's research clutched tightly in his arms, feeling an inexplicable sense of calm despite the danger. Just as the door began to splinter under the poachers' assault, the thunderous sound of helicopter rotors filled the air. Through the window, Jack saw ropes dropping from the sky, and armed wildlife officers rappelling down with precision. What followed was a blur of action. The poachers, caught off guard, were quickly subdued. Dr. Vasquez burst through the door, her eyes widening at the sight of Jack standing shoulder to shoulder with the enormous grizzly. "Incredible," she breathed, before snapping into professional mode. Her team moved swiftly, securing the scene and providing emergency care to the cub. As the chaos settled, Dr. Vasquez approached Jack, her expression a mix of awe and determination. "Mr. Morrison, what you've stumbled upon here, it's bigger than you can imagine. Dr. Blackwood's research could revolutionize our understanding of animal cognition and interspecies communication, but there are powerful interests who want to keep this buried." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "What happens now?" Dr. Vasquez's eyes gleamed with purpose. "We protect this knowledge and these bears, and we find a way to share the truth with the world. But it won't be easy. Are you prepared for what comes next?" As Jack considered her words, he felt a gentle nudge against his leg. The mother bear was looking up at him, her eyes filled with an intelligence that no longer seemed impossible to believe. In that moment, he knew his life would never be the same. "I'm in," he said firmly. Whatever it takes. What Jack didn't realize was that his decision would set in motion a chain of events that would not only challenge the scientific community, but also awaken an ancient alliance that had been dormant for centuries. The true test of his commitment was yet to come. In the days that followed, Jack's life transformed into a whirlwind of activity. The Hidden Valley became a hub of covert research, with Dr. Vasquez's team working tirelessly to analyze Dr. Blackwood's long-lost data. The injured cub, now on the road to recovery, became a symbol of hope for their mission. Jack found himself at the center of it all, his unique bond with the mother bear making him an invaluable part of the research. He spent hours each day working with the team, learning to interpret the subtle nuances of bear behavior that Dr. Blackwood had begun to decode decades ago. One evening, as the sun dipped below the towering pines, Jack sat on the porch of the old ranger station, poring over Dr. Blackwood's journal. The mother bear, whom they had started calling Luna, rested nearby, her watchful eyes never straying far from her cub. "Listen to this," Jack called out to Dr. Vasquez, who was reviewing data nearby. "Dr. Blackwood wrote about a series of cave paintings she discovered in the mountains north of here. She believed they depicted an ancient ceremony between humans and bears, some kind of shared vision quest." Dr. Vasquez's eyes lit up. That could be the missing link we've been looking for. If we could find those caves, it might provide the historical context we need to support our findings. As they discussed the possibility of mounting an expedition, a commotion from the research team inside the station caught their attention. One of the younger scientists burst onto the porch, his face flushed with excitement. "I need to see this," he panted, holding up a tablet. "We've managed to restore some of the old film reels. It's incredible." The footage, grainy but unmistakable, showed a much younger Dr. Blackwood sitting cross-legged in a clearing, surrounded by several adult grizzlies. As they watched in awe, the bears seemed to respond to her subtle hand gestures, moving in patterns that couldn't be coincidence. "She did it," Dr. Vasquez whispered. "She actually established a form of communication with them." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. He turned to look at Luna, who was watching the video with an intensity that seemed almost knowing. Suddenly, Luna stood up, letting out a soft but insistent groan. She began to pace, looking from Jack to the forest and back again. "I think she wants us to follow her," Jack said, standing up slowly. Dr. Vasquez looked skeptical. "Mr. Morrison, I know you've developed a connection with her, but we can't just—" Her words trailed off as Luna gently took the sleeve of Jack's jacket in her mouth, tugging him towards the tree line. The gesture was so deliberate, so unlike typical bear behavior, that even the skeptical scientists fell silent. "Trust me," Jack said, his voice filled with a certainty he couldn't explain. "This is important." As the group hesitantly followed Luna into the deepening twilight, none of them could have anticipated the ancient secrets they were about to uncover. Secrets that would challenge the very foundations of human-animal relationships and rewrite our understanding of consciousness itself. The forest seemed to come alive around them, the shadows dancing in the fading light as Luna led them deeper into uncharted territory. Jack could feel the weight of history pressing in on them, as if the very trees were watching, waiting to see if this group of humans would be worthy of the knowledge they were about to receive. What they would discover in the heart of these primeval woods would not only validate Dr. Blackwood's life's work, but also awaken a power that had lain dormant for millennia, a power that could either heal the rift between humans and nature, or, in the wrong hands, exploit it beyond imagination. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the mountains, Jack Morrison realized that the true journey and the true test of everything he believed in was only just beginning. Luna led the group through the darkening forest with unwavering purpose. Jack, Dr. Vasquez, and a small team of researchers followed, their headlamps casting eerie shadows among the ancient trees. The air grew thick with an almost palpable sense of anticipation. After what seemed like hours, they emerged into a moonlit clearing that took their breath away. Massive, gnarled trees formed a perfect circle around a small spring. The water glowed with an otherworldly blue light, illuminating strange symbols carved into the surrounding rocks. Bioluminescent algae, one of the scientists whispered, but even he sounded unsure. Luna padded to the edge of the spring and looked back at Jack expectantly. Without hesitation, he approached, kneeling beside her. The others watched in tense silence. "Look," Dr. Vasquez gasped, pointing at the rock face behind the spring. As their eyes adjusted, they could make out intricate cave paintings stretching across the stone, scenes of humans and bears, side by side, engaged in what appeared to be complex rituals. At the center was a depiction of a human and a bear touching paws to hand, surrounded by swirling patterns of light. "This must be what Dr. Blackwood discovered," Jack murmured, his heart pounding. Suddenly, Luna let out a low, rhythmic series of grunts. To everyone's astonishment, the water in the spring began to ripple in synchronization with her vocalizations. The blue glow intensified, and the carved symbols on the rocks seemed to shimmer. Dr. Vasquez fumbled for her recording equipment, her hands shaking with excitement. "This is unprecedented. The frequency of her vocalizations must be triggering some kind of resonance in the water and the surrounding rock structure." But Jack barely heard her. He felt drawn to the spring, compelled by a force he couldn't explain. Luna nudged him gently, urging him forward. "Jack, wait!" Dr. Vasquez called out, but it was too late. As Jack's hand touched the glowing water, a jolt of energy surged through him. The world around him blurred, and suddenly he was no longer in the clearing. He found himself experiencing a rapid series of visions, ancient humans and bears, moving together through pristine wilderness, communicating without words, shamanic rituals where humans donned bearskins, accessing deep wells of natural wisdom. Glimpses of a world where the barriers between species dissolved, where consciousness flowed freely between all living things. Just as abruptly, Jack was back in the clearing, gasping for air. Luna stood beside him, her eyes filled with an intelligence that now seemed both ancient and familiar. "Jack, are you all right?" Dr. Vasquez was at his side, her face etched with concern. He nodded slowly, his mind reeling. I can't even begin to describe it, but I understand now. This isn't just about communication. It's about a shared consciousness, a connection we've lost over time." As the team huddled around Jack, peppering him with questions, none of them noticed the shadowy figure watching from the edge of the clearing. The observer slipped away silently, clutching a high-tech recording device. Miles away, in a sleek corporate office, a phone rang. "Sir, we've found it. The Blackwood site. And you won't believe what we've discovered." The man on the other end of the line smiled coldly. "Excellent. Proceed with Phase 2. Whatever it takes. We must secure that location and all related research. The potential applications are limitless." Back in the sacred grove, as the team began to document their incredible findings, they were unaware that forces were already mobilizing against them. The race to uncover and protect the ancient secrets of human-animal connection had begun in earnest. What Jack and his companions didn't realize was that their discovery was about to spark a conflict that would draw battle lines between those who sought to exploit this knowledge and those who understood its true, world-changing potential. Dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. Jack stood at the edge of the sacred grove, his mind still reeling from the previous night's revelations. Dr. Vasquez and her team worked feverishly, documenting every detail of their extraordinary discovery. Luna, the mother bear, sat serenely beside Jack, her presence a comforting anchor in the whirlwind of events. The recovered cub played nearby, its renewed energy a testament to the healing power of this place. "Jack," Dr. Vasquez called, her voice tight with urgency, "you need to see this." She held up a tablet displaying satellite imagery of the surrounding area. Red dots blinked ominously, converging on their location. Multiple vehicles approaching from all directions. This isn't just local law enforcement or forest service. Jack's heart sank. They found us. But how? A twig snapped behind them. They whirled to see a man step out from behind a tree, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. Jack recognized him immediately. David Hawthorne, CEO of BioSynth, one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies. "I believe I can answer that," Hawthorne said smoothly. "And I'm here to make you an offer you'd be foolish to refuse." Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her eyes blazing. "BioSynth, you're the ones who buried Dr. Blackwood's research all those years ago." Hawthorne nodded, unperturbed. A regrettable but necessary action at the time. But now? Now we have the resources and the technology to fully explore this remarkable discovery. As he spoke, the sound of approaching vehicles grew louder. Hawthorne's smile widened. "You have two choices. Work with us, with full funding and protection, or, well, let's just say there are less pleasant alternatives." Jack felt Luna tense beside him. The other bears in the grove began to stir, sensing the rising tension. In that moment, Jack understood what he had to do. He stepped forward, placing his hand on Luna's massive shoulder. "Mr. Hawthorne," he said, his voice steady, "you're right. This discovery could change everything, but not in the way you think." Jack closed his eyes, focusing on the connection he'd felt in the spring. To everyone's astonishment, the other bears in the grove moved to stand beside him and Luna, forming a united front. "This isn't about developing new drugs or weapons," Jack continued. "It's about remembering a bond we've forgotten. A way of living in harmony with nature that we've lost." As he spoke, the symbols on the rock face began to glow faintly. The spring's waters swirled with bioluminescence. Hawthorne's composure faltered. What is this?" Dr. Vasquez gasped as she checked her instruments. "The electromagnetic readings are off the charts. It's as if the entire grove is responding to Jack and the bears." Jack felt a surge of energy flow through him, connecting him not just to Luna and the other bears, but to every living thing in the forest. In that moment of perfect clarity, he understood the true significance of what they'd uncovered. "This is the awakening," he said, his voice resonating with newfound power. "The renewal of an ancient pact between humans and nature, and it can't be controlled or exploited, it can only be shared." As if in response to his words, a blinding light erupted from the spring, enveloping the entire grove. When it faded, Hawthorne and his approaching forces found themselves face to face, not just with Jack and the research team, but with a united front of wildlife, bears, wolves, eagles, and countless other species, all standing in silent, powerful solidarity. Hawthorne stumbled backward, his face pale. This changes everything." "Yes," Jack agreed. "It does." In the days that followed, news of the extraordinary events in the Montana wilderness spread across the globe. The world watched in awe as Jack, Dr. Vasquez, and their ursine companions testified before world leaders and scientific bodies. The awakening had begun. Ancient wisdom, long forgotten, began to resurface around the world. People everywhere reported profound experiences of connection with the natural world. As for Jack Morrison, the simple truck driver who had started it all, he found himself at the center of a new movement, working alongside scientists, conservationists, and indigenous leaders to forge a new path forward, one that honored the sacred bond between all living things. And Luna, she remained by his side, a living symbol of the bridge between two worlds, guardians of a secret that was now, finally, ready to be shared with all of humanity. As the sun set on this new era of understanding, Jack stood at the edge of the sacred grove, Luna by his side. He smiled, feeling the pulse of the living world around him. The journey had only just begun,